Age of Men is over. The time of the Orc has come.
Alright, hello YouTube, welcome back to the Goblin King YouTube channel. Today's video is going to be kind of not exactly a response, but it's going to be taking the topic of Tolkien lore's video of book Theoden versus movie Theoden. Is the movie Theoden even good? Because in his video, and again, I'm going to have that in the description if you want to check it out. Very good YouTuber. I've watched a lot of his videos. He makes great content, so check him out if you like Lord of the Rings content. But he argues that movie Theoden is actually not a good character. He's a pretty bad interpretation of book Theoden. And to that, I agree to disagree. I like both for what they are. Again, I have watched the movies before I read the books, so my idea of a character like Theoden had already been implemented, and I was already pretty okay with movie Theoden. I actually like movie Theoden. So that's a bias that I will have. Again, I watched these movies from a very young age. My dad got me into them, and I didn't end up starting to read the actual book series till like my freshman year of high school. So at this point, that's like, oh, that's rough to think about. It's about like 9 years from now, I think, somewhere around that time. But before we get into the video, if you guys like to like, subscribe, and comment, please do. Help the channel grow to people that might like this content as well. So, why do I say that book Theoden and movie Theoden are pretty much different characters? They're entirely different. And whereas I understand why people that, again, are major Tolkien fans would be upset with this change, I do think inherently Theoden is a much more interesting character for me in the movies. And this might come from my Song of Ice and Fire background. I like that Theoden seems a bit more... He has a little bit more complexities to him in the movies. In the book, Theoden is this character that is a hero. He's very much this character that knows what he wants to do. He's a heroic figure. He's someone like Aragorn. Again, I'm trying to pronounce his name right for you guys. I'm trying, okay? It's hard for me because I've pronounced his name for so long the same way. But yeah, getting back into the point is that he's a great figure for someone like Aragorn to study on how to be a good king. Theoden is a good leader, and a lot of the decisions that Theoden makes in the book is very calculated. They make more sense. They don't just end up at Helm's Deep, whereas movie Theoden isn't that. Movie Theoden has aspects of it where movie Theoden is showing leadership, but it's all kind of a front, right? Because Theoden himself in the movies seems as a character that's very fearful. He doesn't really think that they can kind of beat Isengard at times, right? And that's not really the way he's portrayed in the book. And I like both. Again, I want to say specifically, I don't think there is a right or wrong answer to this discussion. I think both are good. I think they both have their elements that work. Whereas Tolkien lore makes a great point that book Theoden kind of feels like a Captain America in Marvel, where he is very idealistic. He stands behind his beliefs in the book. But movie Theoden, and the things that make him very interesting, is this movie Theoden character is someone that they really play on him being kind of possessed by Saruman and being poisoned and controlled by Wormtongue. They really hype that up way more in the movie than in the book. The book, it is a big plot point, but it's not like zombie Theoden. Like, that's kind of the way it kind of feels like in the movie, is kind of this idea of a zombie Theoden that's just basically under complete control. And the way that that impacts the rest of the story has much more impact in the movie than it ever does really in the book. Because in the movie, one of the things that it's a very subtle thing that they do is Theoden kind of has his arm on the throne, and Gandalf, when he's trying to advise Theoden, puts his arm on him. And it kind of, it's not meant to be this idea of Gandalf manipulating or controlling Theoden, but Theoden having been controlled for so long through Grima with like very similar like things, Theoden is very hesitant to accept that. And I think the problem with Theoden is he's this character that he's lost his son. He's experiencing loss. And I want to point out something that I think Tolkien lore maybe mislooked at or misread. is the idea of loss does not make you a functional person, right? When you're looking at someone that's very close to you, think about it. Theoden losing his son, that's one of the, I think that's, it's hard to judge loss. Loss is bad regardless, but losing your son, someone that you should never lose a child before you, like, die, right? Like, basically, you should be dying before your children do. That's just the way things should go. And when that doesn't happen, it's heartbreaking, and it makes you make very irrational decisions. When you're very emotional, you make bad decisions. We talk about this with my A Song of Ice and Fire channel all the time. Characters that are highly emotional tend to make bad decisions. So when we look at the decision, okay, well, why does Theoden go to Helm's Deep in the movie versus the book? Well, in the book, his plan was never to go to Helm's Deep. His plan was he's going to go reinforce the fords of Isen because they had a force there that when they leave Edoras, they believe is still there and is fine. They get there, that's not the case, and they have to make a decision. You're already this far into the west, you can't just kind of retreat. It kind of makes sense to go to Helm's Deep at that point. In the movie, it's more like Theoden actively chooses to go to Helm's Deep. Now, I, for one, think I understand why he does this. Now, Tolkien lore does make a great point. Like, he should go to Dunharrow. That's the logical part. If you're trying to avoid conflict, and you're not wanting to go into open war with Sauron, and you're trying to avoid that, because that's one of the biggest things for me, is Theoden doesn't want to go into conflict in the movie. He is someone that doesn't want to accept that. And that just goes into him being illogical from his son dying, because he doesn't want other people to die, basically. He's seeing it as he doesn't want other people to experience the pain that he's already had to feel with losing his son. And that's what's going to inherently happen in war. Mothers are going to lose their sons, or fathers, whatever, are going to lose their children. And that's what his plan is. But there's two problems with going to Dunharrow. The one is the movie has to follow the book. So just because of that, you kind of have a plot inconsistency. And that's just something that they dug themselves their own hole in that part of it. So I would agree on that. But Helm's Deep, to me, it's, great stronghold for Rohan, and it's avoiding conflict is what Theoden's doing. But again, he should have gone to Dunharrow if he was thinking logically. So he is right on that part of it. So that's the part that I think is interesting about Theoden. Now, the other part that Theoden comes off as is Theoden is very whiny and complainy in the movies compared to, say, the books. But in the movie, I kind of like that they add this aspect to his character. Think about Theoden, right? Theoden is this person that he feels abandoned. I mean, I think anybody in Theoden's position would feel that way, right? Like, you have all of these allies, but yet none of them are coming to your aid. Gondor is not helping you in your time of need. Now, granted, right, again, you have to take this from a logical point of view of Theoden is not thinking logically. He doesn't realize that Gondor probably shouldn't know what's going on. Now we know there is that scene with Faramir saying that he does know this, but again, Gondor probably wouldn't have been able to get to Rohan anyway in that amount of time, especially because they go closer to Isengard. But it's that idea of someone in a very emotional state is not going to see all the facts that way, right? I just got done doing Jon 3, so again, for my Song of Ice and Fire viewers, Jon Snow is a character that early on in his life is very emotional, and he doesn't really read the situation well. And that's the way Theoden kind of is in this moment, in my opinion. And I think it works for me. I know it doesn't work for other people, and I don't think that's a wrong opinion. You guys can let me know what you guys think about movie Theoden. But as we kind of go forward with Theoden as a character, what I was trying to kind of show with whiny Theoden, why he kind of is complaining a lot, he has every right to. I mean, he has been mind controlled. He doesn't want to go into war. He's watched or not watched, but his son died, I mean, and it was basically kind of his fault for that because he wasn't readying Rohan, and that kind of caused his son to die. And now he's at the point where Rohan is facing horrible odds that they're going to beat Saruman. It looks like they're going to lose. He kind of has, in my opinion, every right to kind of feel like that, but he should be a better leader. But that's the thing, is that publicly, to his men, he is this courageous king. He is the Theoden from the book. Publicly, to his army, to the peasants, the people that follow him. He is that. It's only kind of privately to characters like Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, maybe his small inner council, that he kind of shows these things. And that's something that if you're Aragorn, you can take away, right? You can take away that, oh, you always need to put on this show of courage and not showing any type of leniency where you think maybe we could lose. Because then that will enact people to start being fearful and saying that, oh, if the leader's questioning it, maybe we should too. And that's a whole different rabbit hole. So there are lessons that Aragorn does take away from this. Now, with that being said, that kind of gets us into Return of the King. That it kind of handles a lot of the Two Towers. And I think the Two Towers and Theoden's character arc as a whole is coming out of this shell, stopping to being afraid, feeling bad for himself, avoiding conflict. That's all going to kind of culminate in kind of the end of Two Towers, because Two Towers, it's not exactly the end of Theoden's character arc, because it really happens in Return of the King. But you have this idea where Theoden is tired of running by the end of Two Towers, and he faces them. That's the whole thing with him and Aragorn, and as they're riding out. That's Theoden kind of facing the issue that, we may die here, but not running away from Saruman and Isengard and all of the Uruk-hai. And when we get into Return of the King, Theoden is still, I think, for me, inside, still fearing conflict. He's avoiding, especially early on, going to help Gondor because they didn't help him. And he still has that bitterness, something that I think a lot of people would feel. They didn't come to help us. Why should we go help them? That is a common thing all throughout the world now, right? That's one of the major issues with the world, is that if someone didn't help you, why should you help them? Type thing. And a better world would be helping people just to help people. And that's one of the things we see, that we have this idea that Theoden doesn't want a conflict, 1. 2, he has this bitterness against Gondor for not helping them. And 3, he doesn't want to see more of his people die. So when we get to the point of Aragorn coming in saying the beacons have been lit, well, Theoden, I think, up to this point, probably inside of himself, publicly he's been saying, why should we help Gondor? But I think inside of him, he's like, this is the right thing to do, right? He should be helping Gondor. Whether they didn't help him or not, he should be doing that. And even inside, you're thinking, Mordor's not going to stop at Gondor. This will eventually become my issue anyway. Might as well try and fix this issue and help the Free Peoples while Gondor is still alive. I think that could be going through his mind, and finally gathering up more courage to go and fight his enemy. Because again, the second movie, The Two Towers, is about him running from battle and defending. He is now going to ride to the battle. And that's a big moment for Theoden's character arc within the movies. And as we get to Pelennor Fields, and we see Theoden, about to die and all of this, I think Theoden has finally come to that point when he's talking to Eowyn, where he can finally be at peace and feel like he is worthy of going to the halls of his elders, of his ancestors, because he faced his fears. He faced the conflict, and he finally becomes the Theoden that we see in the books in that moment. He brings Rohan to the aid of the Free Peoples and helps save all of Middle-earth. That is the moment. He, facing death, he can go peacefully, and he doesn't feel that fear anymore. And that, to me, is a very powerful character arc. And I always thought Theoden was a good character in the movies. I thought there were things that they did with him that, Tolkien lore brings up that are a little questionable. But overall, the actual theme, I thought works really well for the movies. And I thought was interesting, because we see a lot of these characters like Aragorn who are really heroic, and we see Legolas and all these characters that are really heroic. Bringing in a character like Theoden and changing him to where he isn't that is very interesting. And I thought it worked well for me. It doesn't work well for everyone. Again, Tolkien lore didn't work well for him. But let me know what you guys think on what I presented here for Theoden, or movie Theoden. And I'll see you guys all in the next video. Bye, guys.